When you have to shoot, don't talk.
All right, everyone. Welcome to the Trap House Podcast for episode 16. My name's Justin Jett, and today we got two guests on the show. We have Gary Groenewold of Groenewold Fur and Wool Company and Mike Mazur out of Iowa, both heavily involved in the fur industry, as you'll find out once we jump into this podcast. Big fur buyers over the years. They've worked together, and it was really nice to be able to sit down and chat with them, a four-way podcast, so it gets kind of hectic with that many microphones bouncing around, but it was a good time. This past weekend, I want to give a little shout-out to the Fur Taker chapter in Northern Illinois, Chapter 17I. They had a little get-together for their fall meet, and we set up a booth over there, and I gave a little demo, and it went well, so I just want to say thanks for having me. Thank you to the sponsors. We have maker of the Hags Bracket, J3 Outdoors. Check out their website, j3o.com, and see their full line of stuff. They're on social media as well. Also, got to give it up for Top Lot Stretcher Company. Their website is toplotstretcherco.com. They have a full range of trapping supplies and all your goodies to get ready for the field, along with adjustable stretchers, wooden stretchers that I highly recommend. Great product. So check out their website. And also got to give it up for Hoosier Trapper Supply. They're keeping this whole thing going, so I really appreciate that. Full line of trapping products, lure, bait, everything you need, including trapping kits to get you going if you're new. So just want to say thank you for all the orders coming out of there, and everyone's getting ready for season, so it's getting exciting, and it's getting cold, so it really gets you fired up. And want to go ahead and mention Groenewold's Fur and Wool Company's website. It's www.gfwco.com, so you can check out to their site and see kind of what they got going on. They're also on social media and a lot of stuff relating to the fur industry, including a parka jacket right on their home screen I'm looking at right now. It's pretty cool. We kind of talk about in this podcast where your fur's going and how it can end up, and that sort of thing. It's not 100% traditionally like what you think how things turn out all the time, so this is a different avenue that we're talking about. So if you ship fur and it ends up overseas, these are some of the places it could end up, so it's pretty cool. I think that's all I want to say. Let's jump into this podcast and let Charlie start introducing everybody. Thanks.
All right, so we're at the NTA National in Missouri, Springfield, Missouri, and we have two guests with us today. We've got Mike Mazur, who I've gotten to know at the Trappers College, and the interesting thing about he and I, we are the same age, which means we're fairly old, and but what makes us unique to most, I guess, is we both started in the fur industry, the fur business, buying fur when we were like 18. Is that right, Mike?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I wised up and quit in 1991, and Mike kept on going.
It took me to 2017 to get to wise up enough. But I worked for Groenewold's Fur and Wool Company for close to 40 years now.
Yeah.
Can't say enough about them. I mean, it's just like a second family to me. I've raised my family the whole time. They've done well to me, and it was just time to do other things.
Right. And I didn't have quite that advantage.
Yeah.
So I was kind of on my own.
Well, I didn't get this advantage right away. It took several years,
exactly,
different places to go.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that I kind of. So I'm as many of you know, I'm a NAFTA agent. So that's still my connection to the fur industry. But I'm not, I'm not invested quite so much. But Mike is an instructor at the college for trapping, as well as he heads up the fur handling, fur grading instructional segment towards the end of the week at the college.
And also skinning, fur handling.
Correct.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And then we have Gary Groenewold with us. Fortunate to have him here for his second generation of fur industry.
Well, it would be the third, actually.
Third. Okay.
Yeah.
So, and many of you have heard of him and dealt with him because you guys travel the country with
Right.
your fur routes and buying fur. So
Right. So we're going to talk about the fur market today.
we're just going to talk about.
Okay.
I'm here too, by the way. If
Yeah.
anyone's,
Oh,
I'm here to
yeah,
just
yeah.
take it all in.
And Justin's here as usual. He's the he's the guy that
Well, you
heads up
guys-
this whole podcast. So.
I'm sitting in this truck thinking these guys are much older than me. They've been through a lot more than me in their time, so I'm just going to take all this in and hopefully learn something.
We're just more seasoned and polished than Justin.
I'm learning from the best is what I'm trying to get at
Well,
here.
we have the top guys with us, so in the fur industry. So
Well, yeah. So I'm Gary Groenewold. We're going to talk about the fur market. I guess in terms of the fur market, first of all, you have to know there is a fur market, because many times people think that there isn't a fur market anymore, and they're discouraged because they think there's no market for what they catch. And we say there's a market for everything you catch, and actually we have an insatiable need for actually fur right now. And what does that mean? We're selling at prices where the market actually is, and so we're buying at prices where the market actually is. And of course there's a profit margin in there. So that means there is a market right now. We're sold out of a lot of items that we actually can't replace. We don't think we can replace anymore, because, like, for instance, like small size raccoon, who wants to keep them, who wants to process them, because it doesn't create a lot of value for the trapper. However, the middle of the spring of last year, there was a movement on that type of raccoon. We could use as many as that we could get. I mean, that's to tell you there's a market, and whether you want to be a part of that market or not, that's up to you. So that's where I'll start with first, and that's on all items. We have two things. We have a ranch mink and we have a coyote. Those are two things to think about when you're in wild furs. Ranch mink right now are way below, the price of them is way below the production cost. In other words, it costs $40 to produce a ranch mink. A rancher probably will get less than average for his whole collection of mink. He'll probably be under $30 this year. So he's well under that. So that shows you where the demand for the mink actually is. And that also creates, when the price is so low, mink has been the standard in terms of a substitute. Something when mink went really high, there were substitutes that fell in behind mink that people substituted in, and that's where wild fur came into play. And then they would follow suit after after ranch mink became expensive. Then the wild fur would fall in suit behind the ranch mink. So, but with ranch mink down so low right now, really wild fur has to stand on its own, and that's what we're actually seeing right now. We're seeing coyotes are up a lot. Coyotes trended up even during this whole year. We see them, not necessarily trending up, but at least maybe plateauing, but not going down this year. So that may cause a substitute for other long-haired items, which could be raccoon. Okay, so and that's for the northern sections where they can use a raccoon for trimming, but raccoon that are used for lining, that's where there's an insatiable need. China is using. We have them in our booth here. China is using liners. They like raccoons for liners of their jackets. They're using them for parkas, not on the outside, but on the inside of jackets. They have cloth on the outside, and they're using them for coats. So that's why raccoons are used. Muskrats, the same thing. They're used for liners. They're no longer muskrats. It's old school, where people thought they were skin on skin on the outside, let out. That stuff is so old. It doesn't even exist in the industry anymore. They don't let out a mink in the industry anymore. Let out is when they cut it in little bitty strips to make neat little narrow strips on a coat. They don't do that anymore. That doesn't even exist. Even fur coats, full fur coats made out of minks are very rare to see at the shows when you go to international markets. Even minks are being used for trim. So that's to show you what it's being used for. What is good about that? When fur is being used for trims, it adds a lot of value to the product that they're attaching it to. So therefore, they can sell it for a higher price. So if something is in demand, if a garment is in demand, then that skin that's on that trim is going to go with that garment, and that's going to go up with the demand. So that's what we're hoping can happen with the wild fur. That's something that wild fur is attached to, that it becomes in fashion. So that's kind of what we're looking for. And this fashion is being driven in China. It's not being driven in Russia like it was before, or the international market. This is a market for the middle-class Chinese person. These coats are not being sold as $10,000 coats, to some wealthy lady in Russia. This is for middle-class people, and that's where these coats are going. Fur has lost its, you could say, its what do we call that? The luxury item appeal. It's lost that. There isn't elasticity in prices like it used to be. There isn't the large margins. There's very small margins, actually, in fur. Like, you won't find a guy that'll pay $5 more because you give him another extra service. No, it's people are cutting costs. They're making something that is made for the middle class people. So they want something that they can buy like every year, something that's ready for these middle class people to buy. And the problem is right now in the fur industry, you could say China's economy is sticky. You could say one thing is because of our tariffs or whatever. Chinese economy is sticky right now, and because Chinese economy is sticky, the fur industry they don't want to buy a coat. They don't have the extra money to buy a fur coat. So when the economy does well in China, then we can see the middle class start to buy more, and that's when we can actually see an improvement in the wild fur, where we can actually, you could say something should happen. However, have hope right now, because we think something can jump into fashion in China, and if something jumps into fashion, then they will, whatever we have in America can be used immediately. And we're always hoping and looking for this. We don't bank our business on that, but we saw a trend up in raccoon a little bit last year. We hope this season it might catch on even more this year. It might catch on less. We don't know, but we saw a little interest in raccoon last year for the trimming industry. So, yeah, I guess that's what I can tell you. That's the general overview, so you have an understanding what goes on the market. The tariffs that the United States has, the tariff war that China has with China, you could say that doesn't really affect directly the fur prices, because they go around those tariffs. When there's 25% on a tariff, China knows we don't know how to go around them. It comes to our country, we have a higher consumer product price because we don't go around that 25%, or not really yet. But they go around it when it goes into their country, and they know how to go around it. And we're seeing that actually happen. People are dressing in other countries. There's always a black market going on in China. So that's
if it's dressed in
Cambodia,
then it enters China from Cambodia, then there's no tariff.
Then there's no tariff.
Okay.
If it goes in from Thailand, if it goes in from another country, this value added to the product is in another country. It doesn't need a U.S. Veterinary certificate to go into that country. It goes in under the country where the value has been added to it.
Okay.
So, however, it's not. Yeah. So that's actually what that's how they're going around it. And also, they have ways directly in, I am sure, without paying those taxes. Yeah. So, yeah.
But isn't that kind of what got hung up back in 2013, where that was part of the reason for things toppling down?
Yeah. Well, she came into office. He cracked down on a lot of the corruption that was there. A lot of the fur coats that were used, in that peak in the fur industry in 2013. A lot of those coats were actually being used for bribery. I mean, a mink coat was considered a luxury item, and a mink coat was given, if somebody didn't want to pay taxes or want to do something illegal in their factory, they would give someone a mink coat for their wife or for the man. Men also wear fur coats over in China. They would give them a fur coat that would be sent like a huge gift, and then a law would be changed because of that. I mean, that's the way you can buy laws with mink coats. That's how it used to work in the future, but that doesn't exist anymore. They had a lot of arrests. There were like probably 3 phases of arrests. I was actually in China one time when the arrests happened. I was going to meet a customer who had just been arrested that morning, and people had to come to my hotel, and they had to tell me that somebody has been arrested that you're supposed to meet, and there's a lot of people. Some people are just getting out of jail that we knew. So that changed the fur industry a lot at that time. Yeah.
That's crazy stuff.
Yeah.
When you start digging into this, like, wow.
Yeah.
So does it concern you that it doesn't have the luxury appeal?
Well, that's a good point. That's a really good point, because the luxury appeal is where the margins were created in the fur industry.
Sure.
That's why everyone could exist in it, because you could somehow find that gap where you can make a profit on an extra profit beyond operating costs, or a surprise profit.
Sure.
And now that's gone. So we have to operate with extremely low overhead. Okay, and we are getting goods into China. Like our goods that go into China, we used to have Chinese people that would come to our factory, say 10 at a time. I remember one time we had 10 at a time. They would buy raw goods and they would take them back, and then they would sell them there. That's not how it works anymore. The manufacturers in China now are not buying them raw. They want to buy dressed goods in China. They want to focus on manufacturing. They do not want to focus on buying the products overseas and work the taxes and with smuggling them in. They want to make coats in China and focus on that. So now you don't have the buyers, all the buyers coming over trying to find these goods at cheap prices. What they're doing is they'll just buy them in China. So they're buying them in bulk in China. So what we're doing is we're taking goods in, and this is radical for the industry, but we're saying your put up this how everyone was so worshipped the way that they put up their fur, and making it so perfect and everything. Our fur is sold based upon how comes out through the dress. Okay, that's how it's not how pretty it is when it's it just comes off of your stretcher. The real value of that fur is what it is when it was caught, and do you maintain that value to the point where it's dressed. It's not how pretty you make it look on the stretcher. It's how does it come out when it's dressed.
And when you're saying dressed, he's meaning coming through the tannery.
Coming through the tannery.
Some people miss that terminology.
Right. So yeah, it's okay.
Okay, so and so we're starting to actually do a lot of our to cut costs. We're going to just ship container loads of fur over to China.
Already dressed. Already tanned.
No, just stretched and dried, and stretched and dried in our primitive way. Stretched and dried in our primitive way, much more primitive than the top lot guy gets, and it's very primitive. But we know what we've got in it, and we know what we've bought, and we're very cautious about what we bought. We ship it over there, and then we grade it over there after it's been dressed. So we give the guy that is buying it exactly what he wants, and give the market what they want. So that's what's changing. It's we don't have room and margins for commissions and fees, and we don't have margins for that. I mean, the fees can be sometimes more than the animal is actually worth, or 3 times worth more than the animal is actually worth.
Right.
So we want to eliminate all of that. Okay, and that's where we want to save. And the shipping cost, we want to be able to ship in containers, and the skins are packed together like we pack our wool together, so we can get the maximum amount of fur in a container. Mm-hmm. Okay, these are all the different ways that we're looking to save money for to get the most out of the fur at the final product, so that we can give the trapper the most. Okay, that's what we're actually doing.
To relate that to the trapper, though, the trapper obviously needs to. I mean, you'll buy it stretched and dried.
We'll buy it stretched and dried.
But he's going to bring it to you guys green, and then you guys you'll do the put up.
Yeah.
We're putting up. It's more of a commercialized operation than it used to be. They used to sell on presentation a lot.
Sure.
I'm going to say how much 90% of this stuff doesn't even
Yeah.
get seen till after it's or come through the tannery. Maybe even more now, right, Gary?
Maybe more. Nobody wants to come
So
over.
our operation now is fresh goods come from the trapper. We handle immediately, so there's no chance of spoilage, and done quickly. So we sacrifice a little bit on the looks, but we know what product we have.
Right.
Quick, clean, get it done. Don't worry about it.
Right. But since they're not seeing it until it's tanned, then the looks of that finished skin makes no difference.
No, as long as it's done fresh
Right.
and clean. Because
Right.
and another thing that comes a byproduct of this is they're guaranteeing everything that they send to dress or come through the tannery with no problems.
Well, yeah, actually, it's beyond that right now, Mike, because that's how we used to do it. We would guarantee it through the tanning. We're taking the risk of the tanning. We're not even selling it. We're not even sell it. We're not even sell it till it's tanned. So
Okay.
that is a bigger guarantee because we really it's ours, and there's no we're responsible all the way to the end through the tanning now. I mean, that's the way we've lived all of our life. That's the way we've always done it. We've guaranteed it through the tanning, but that's to our benefit now because now that we can now we're selling in China dress fur.
Right.
Yeah.
We probably need to put a little explanation
fur.
here.
Yeah.
So we're talking about you.
Yeah.
You're taking up the processing, and you know where you're at on that processing. You know what you need to do.
Yeah.
Fresh goods work through, and then you're selling it as a tan skin after it's already tanned.
Right.
Obviously. So the average trapper on this level, I mean, he cannot get away with the rough put up shipping it to an auction.
Right.
That's still in place.
Yeah.
This is a little bit different scenario.
Yes, it is.
The problem with when you say rough put up though is how did they actually handle that animal? Was
Right.
it done fresh? The put up is not as critical as it used to be if it's done fresh.
Yeah.
We just have to guarantee everything to be workable, usable, 100%. We can't have no fallout anymore.
I remember in when things really started ramping up, mid 70s going up. You could buy fur that was stretched too wide or not particularly met the specifications that were, and it was not that big a deal. And then of course things
Right.
started really tightening up.
Right.
I mean, and that's a little bit different than what we're talking about now. But yeah, I mean, because they knew that the tan was going to still come out okay.
Yeah.
Back then. But of course we got away from that.
Well, yeah, we went to the standardized sizes and something that was could be universally bought and sold. To try to make the wild fur industry something standardized. We really became, you could say, anal about that because people had to know what they're getting, and that's where the wild fur industry had such a beef because the end user never knew what he was getting because everybody's grading systems were different.
Right.
And so, but those days are seemingly over because of the who's demanding what. Will this last forever? Well, obviously, and I guess what we're really talking about right now is actually raccoon. Primarily, our muskrats, still are sold not dressed, but our coyotes are sold both ways, but those are actually sold not dressed. The other furs we're starting to actually dress more and more to actually sell them. So there are a few furs that doesn't apply to, but however, we see that this is the way that the industry is moving because there's no reason to touch a coyote, even a coyote, 3 or 4 times to manipulate it with the grade. It's like it is what it is. Let's use it. We know. Let's make it into a collar as quick as we can. I mean, that's the goal. It's not to for 5 guys to make $2 off of the same skin. It's make your dollar. One guy makes $1 off one skin, and that's it. Get rid of it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's more of the. It used to be everything was buy and sell. You could at a trappers convention, you could buy and sell the same lot of raccoon 3 times, and everybody could make some money, and everybody would be happy. That's the way it used to be. It's not like that anymore. There's not many dealers left.
And that's because the margins are so small.
The margins are small. That's right.
It's
You
just not there.
need a volume, and there's such a question, like a vague question. What's going to happen in the market? And you have to have a feel on the market. And if you're investing your own money, and there's not a big margin anymore for not knowing the information, how to take a swing in the market. If you don't know the information enough about what's going to happen in the market, if the margin isn't that big enough, then you're no longer willing to go into that risk. And that's what's happened. It's such a question of what's going to happen in the industry. And so when your margin is large, you can take a larger risk. When your margin's less, you can't take a risk.
Yeah.
And so that's what's happened in the fur industry today.
Yeah.
What should we tell trappers?
Yeah. That's. I'm thinking that at this point they're probably scratching their head.
Yeah. That's what
It's like, what do they need to
Well,
be
I
doing?
can relate a little bit about what he's talking about, production and commercialization and stuff. One of the biggest things is, somebody will be at the Trappers College and say, well, I pin my muskrats up with, put them on a board, and I stretch everything. That's fine if it makes you feel good. Is it actually making you any money? I believe not. It is what it is when you kill it. It's only going to be worth so much. You can't make a number 2 into a number 1, but you can definitely make a number 1 into a number 2 or 3 or 4, right?
Yeah.
With handling.
Right.
Charlie's laughing at that. He understands.
Yeah.
Some of the trappers don't quite understand that. The moment you kill that animal, it is worth what it's worth, period. You can't make it worth any more. You could definitely make it worth less. So.
Yeah. There's no secret tips, tricks to make it
no.
better than what it is.
You
It is what it is.
You can't skin a coon halfway up the belly to make belly fur on the back. For length
Yep,
and all that
they
kind of
see
silly-
that 100%.
Silly
Right.
stuff.
Yeah.
And that's where this dressing is coming in. They're getting exact sizes when it comes out. There's no shrinkage. They see the damage.
Yeah.
It's all right in front of them. We're not trying to hide anything. We want, like Gary said, give them what they want. Let them take what they want.
Yeah.
You guys, you could say everybody in here is an old trapper in one sense.
Sure.
But we have people listening to this, just say to this podcast, that they're new trappers.
Sure.
And what this means to you is you don't have the pressure or that expectation on you to make a nice finished product. You can actually skin it, freeze it, and actually sell it. I mean, that's what we're actually selling. We're saying maybe that's good for the industry also. There's not this it's not prohibitive for somebody to get into it because they see this huge barrier in front of them. I got to put up fur and scrape on a beam, and but I can skin an animal. I skun a fish a few times. You know what I mean? I filleted that fish, and maybe I can put it in the freezer, and then I can learn how to trap. And that's another aspect where we think it's good for the industry actually right now also. So
Right. I think though the barrier there is that we don't have a fur buyer in every county like we did in the 70s and
You're
80s.
right.
Yep.
So
That's true.
the local fur buyer that was everything from a place obviously to market your fur to a social place to the exchanging ideas and the whole thing. Are becoming a thing of the past,
Yeah.
and it has become a thing of the past in a lot of areas.
Sure.
So that other than you guys running your route, there's not a lot of raw fur buyers out there like there once was.
Right.
So where your route is, it's great.
yeah, that's
You know,
right. That's right.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
You're right.
so
I'm talking to people where our route is,
Yeah.
and however, like guys can still put up a coyote. Guys can still, You're right. I'm talking to those guys. However, the area where we run our routes, you could say, is where a lot of the raccoon are, and also it's where it's hardest to put up a raccoon. Other areas, in the south, it's easier to put up raccoon. By the way, if you're in the south, we bought coon stretch and dried that were averaging a little bit over $5 this last year. I mean, those were select areas, but guys were starting to think, hey, and some guys have meat markets, and all these different, beavers now have the castor market. Guys are going to go trapping castor next year and not beaver. You know what I mean? That's what they're going to be trapping. They're going to be trapping castor. I'm trapping castor.
yeah.
And we're seeing that in the industry. So yeah,
Do you guys handling beavers the same way?
we handle beavers the same way.
Yeah.
Beavers are we sold 200 beaver out of all the beaver we bought this last year. We sold 200 beavers, I think, for garments. And the price that we got was a few dollars more than the hatter market. So it doesn't even hardly pay for us to sort through our beavers to find out 200 beavers that are worth shearing. So the hatter market is dominating it, and there's a decent hatter market. One of the reasons is because there's not the volume of beavers caught anymore like
Right.
there used to be. So, and the hatter market is it's making felt out of beaver fur. That's, I mean, if people want to know what it is, it's not making a fur hat. It's making a felt hat out of beaver fur. Whether
Like
it's mixed
cowboy hat,
a
western
cowboy
hat,
hat.
or
I got me a couple Stetson hats that I'm proud of.
Stetson hats. Actually, the Orthodox Jews call their hats that they wear as Biber, which is the Yiddish word for beaver. They call it a Biber. If you've seen those big brimmed hats that are a square brim on the top, those are all beaver hats, and a lot of those aren't made with beaver, but traditionally or originally they were made with beaver. But those are used for that felt. Some of those use beaver, but hat or beaver are used for felt, and that's what people have to understand. So, so any beaver can be used for that is caught in the winter from the south to the north.
right. And I mean, you still see those really nice beavers that would have, a few
Yeah.
years, and
Yeah.
but they're going to felt.
Yeah, I
They're
saw
in-
one at our factory just before I left here. We're doing a special process, and I felt the back where the weakest supposed to be on the beaver, and it was so thick, but it was definitely a number one shear, but that was going to go straight into the hatter industry.
It's got to kind of make you feel bad in a way.
yeah, it does. I mean, there's
Gotta
guys
get
in
used to it.
guys in Maine. I mean, they don't trap under the ice anymore because there's no incentive. They just kept spraying beaver because it's for the hatter market.
Yeah.
Nobody traps under the ice anymore, and that's going to affect the industry because you don't have guys that know how to trap under the ice anymore.
Yeah. That's interesting. So, you got anything to add to that, Mike?
I'm pretty dumbfounded. Justin, take over.
No, so we got China, and obviously
Yeah.
a huge fur consuming country.
Right.
Is there anybody else out there?
That's a good question. The Russian market, which actually dominated the industry in the late '80s when the Iron Curtain actually fell, it is very selective right now, and that was a place where there was a lot of elasticity in the market. I mean, you could find it was nice to sell over to Russia because now and then you'd find it'd be great to sell there, but you don't see that anymore. The Russian woman, they know fur. A few people like to wear it for luxury. They don't have they're driving cars around. They're not standing around at bus stops waiting for a bus to come. So in Siberia, so they don't need the big heavy fur. It's not so practical. They want something light so they can get in their car. People's lifestyles have changed. Fashions have changed. So Russia is spotty. You can sell some cats there. Sometimes you can sell some, and then they make hats still. But somebody wants a stocking cap. Somebody wants just a warm baseball hat because they go in their car. In Russia, where every man used to have a fur hat over there, and today, modern society, a fur hat looks a little bit silly when somebody's trying to be civil. You know what I mean? If somebody wants to be dress up a little bit comical, a little bit unique, then he can wear a fur hat in America, and that's almost the way it is in Russia too. I mean, you're representing the old life, communism almost.
Gotcha. Okay.
When you have a hat. So, but there's markets in Korea. There's furs going to Korea. There's some going to Japan. Some to Western Europe. There's still some fur going throughout the world.
The idea of you can call it the green idea or the idea of fur as not acceptable socially certainly affected the market in Europe, basically shut it down.
Yeah.
Do you see that happening in China? Has that happened in Russia at all? I mean, can you see indications of that kind of
You didn't see that
influence?
in Russia. You didn't see that. That's not what happened in
Okay.
Russia at all. No, it was more of a style. It wasn't a pity actually for the animal. China, you don't see it at all. This is why even the accountability of the trapper. You guys, the trappers, are incredible conservationists. They're incredible outdoorsmen. They care for the animals. This is why, actually, you think about it, the green should actually want fur.
Exactly.
I mean, it
makes sense in the sustainability and all of the non-polluting idea.
Yeah, it's something that is harvested, that is sustainable from the environment, and it's a wild animal. And you guys know how. I mean, any trapper that's doing it efficiently, wants to like take care of that animal as efficiently as possible, and that's to take care of it as humanely as possible.
Sure.
The two actually go together. And then he also is most concerned about his environment and the reproduction and diseases. The trapper's all concerned about all of that.
Right.
And then imagine that someone gets to wear warmth, and it came from the environment. It's not a synthetic. You know what I mean? It's not a.
It's all natural.
Yeah, it's completely natural. It's biodegradable. You just throw it in the landfill. It goes right back into. It doesn't stay in the landfill for 25 years. In 1 year, that fur coat is gone.
Right.
So.
Right. And I this is an offshoot of that, but it's always interesting at trappers conventions. We're always thought of these terrible people and that we hate animals, or we got this this problem with animals. And the number of people here with their dogs and their pets and their almost member of the family. I think the outside world doesn't even see us as having a heart for animals, and of course the opposite. Is completely it's completely opposite of that.
We have to preach that, by the way.
Yeah.
I mean, with the people. I mean, who cares about their dog more than a coon hunter?
Right.
You ever seen a guy a coon hunter take care of his dog? I mean, it was beautiful to watch.
Right.
We have to preach that more and tell people this is the greatest trim you could ever. Actually, trim actually does make you warmer. By the way, right? It deflects the flow of air that's coming in. That's why the Eskimos wore it. It deflects the flow of air that's coming in around. It doesn't go into your face. So this is a great way to stay warm. And here it is. It could be used. The parka has a reason, because it's very warm. And you put natural fur around there. It deflects the cold air coming in and goes around, and you have a warmer face and a warmer coat. So
Sure. And
there's a science behind it.
Right, and it's a natural product.
And it's a natural product.
Sustainable product. So how about Canada Goose? There are.
Yeah, they are the flagship in terms of. They've helped the industry. They've with the coyote trims. They are looking into substitutes. They are actually looking into fake fur. You know what I mean? I was told that. I think maybe in one of their market reports that came out, or I don't know. They are looking to fake fur. They are looking into substitutes to coyote with natural fur also. So. I hope the industry it can continue Canada Goose. If the Western society drops it, I think that China, they've taken their knockoffs from Canada Goose, and they kind of have their own style going right now. That's the coats that we have here. Is a knockoff for a Canada Goose actually.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of fashion still going that's knocked off from Canada Goose that will carry us beyond, even if the Western countries stop buying trim right now.
So do you see that as happening, or is it a struggle, an uphill battle, or how do you see that?
I don't know where Canada Goose is on that in terms of we've tried to invest into Canada, we've tried to influence, we've tried to make suggestions to Canada Goose, not directly but indirectly. We've given them ideas, samples to work with. We've directly given them samples. We don't know what direction they'll go. They're a multi-million-dollar company. Their stocks fell about 30%, maybe about a month ago, but they've been climbing back up since. I hope that company continues to use natural fur.
So what was the basis of their stock?
I don't actually know. I mean, they gave their report. Earnings weren't as good as that they thought they were, and that it dropped, but now it's climbing back up.
Maybe that's because they were paying more for coyotes than they had budgeted.
Yeah. Well, now they have to rebudget. They have to rebudget because
Sure.
they went. I know that the contracts are up, and they have to rebudget because they're not cheaper.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm sure that had to play a part of the role.
It could have done something. Sure. Yeah.
Raw product cost was more. So the fashion end of this fur industry, what countries are there that are? Is Italy still in that?
Well, Italy the Italians are. Woolrich does a lot of trimming. Actually, they have their own parka that Italy likes. Italy likes the name Woolrich. Actually, Italy bought Woolrich. A company in Italy bought Woolrich. Now they since sold it. It's in a holding company right now, but. So Woolrich is no longer owned in the United States, but Italy likes fur. They actually are developers or leaders in fashion in fur terms of the fur industry. Some of the high-end names are still using fur. We know what has happened in New York has made a proposal in New York City to actually ban fur, I believe it is. So, these are ill-informed people that actually, you could say, don't know what's green. We say, you guys don't know what's green because this is the greenest product out there. You just have to do your homework, guys. Hope you're listening because these products that these trappers, that these farmers are producing are extremely green products. The most green you can have. That's what Adam and Eve were clothed with, first of all, right? Yeah, coats of skins, and then it's what John the Baptist wore. It's all through the Bible.
Sure.
These are the original garments.
Yeah. Well, I always say it's way easier to jump on an emotional bandwagon and wave the flag for some sort of cause than it is to go do some homework, find out the perspective, find out the facts. That's a lot more boring than it is to jump on some emotional,
Yeah, I agree 100%. It's turned into an emotional factor instead of a scientific.
Right. What makes sense? And
makes sense or sustainable.
Yeah.
Oh, I feel it shouldn't be done. It looks cruel. It's not.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's what they've been taught.
Yeah.
I just want to say something to the trapper. You guys are the greatest sportsmen. I just love talking to a trapper. I'm not a trapper myself, but how you think about animals, how you think of their instincts. Everyone has a little bit different take in terms of the animal, the way they set their trap. It's actually beautiful to watch the mind of a trapper work in terms of the animal. And by the way, father-son operations, it's the most beautiful thing that I see in the state of Iowa. On Saturday, our father-sons like trapping together. They're thinking together. They're living together. They're learning how to produce something together. It's a great sporting event that happens in trapping. I wish it would be revived. I wish these podcasts can help revive it because there's nothing greater than going out into the woods and trying to be a step ahead of the animal and actually taking your prey in a humane way.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. I think and we're there every day. It's not I'm going to decide to go hunting today and that's that's a little rough outside. I'm not going to go, so we're going to go. But
no days off.
Trappers are out there every day. I mean, we see more in the scheme of nature than I think just about anybody.
You do.
And but we're pretty in tune to it. I think that's a really good point. And this generational tie that we have, both sons and daughters that are out there.
Another
trapping.
thing maybe should be brought up too. There's some new trappers and stuff, and maybe they're on the fence about their emotions and whatnot. There is the seasons for fur-bearing animals is set by scientific proof.
Sure.
It's not willy-nilly. We are governed when we can harvest, how we can harvest, and utilization of our product.
Exactly.
I mean, it's not just something thrown out there that I'll go today, or we have to follow rules and laws, or pay the consequences, and it's to sustain our product.
Right.
Yeah, so I mean, it's proven over and over and over scientifically. We have to keep the emotions out of it,
right?
And because it's a beautiful thing,
right?
It's beautiful.
And I think there's this level of emotion. I think that unless you're some bloodthirsty psycho, which I hope none of us are, but there is some emotion to it. But we have I think trappers have a complete understanding of that.
Sure.
That's where we're at on that.
Yeah.
So anyways, that's
they're more
you're so
into
far from bloodthirsty.
Well,
exactly. Yeah.
You care. You know how many kittens that coon had. You know what I mean?
Right.
You care. You know what I mean? You guys know so much about that animal.
And talking about being governed, it's all watched by wildlife biologists, trained wildlife biologists most of them have master's degrees now. They require quite a bit of training. If these animals survived the 70s and 80s, trapping pressure of the 70s and 80s, and that was thankful to the biologists that were in place. I mean, they got us through all of that.
Yes.
I mean, the amount of animals that were caught in the fur boom years was just absolutely incredible. I mean, it's just the sheer numbers.
It's actually harder on them with these low prices of being overpopulated with disease and everything that comes through.
Yeah.
When you utilize a resource, whether it be timber, fur, or whatever, you use it to its potential. You have a better product every time.
Right. Which is
yeah, and that's our goal, sustainability.
Sure, exactly.
So,
we have these outbreaks and disease outbreaks much more prevalent now with the animal populations levels being as high as they are, and so where, and I know that takes a crystal ball, but so in your estimation, where do you see the future of the fur industry going? And I know that it's probably, obviously you got to adapt to the times, adapt to the change, adapt to whatever. But where do you see all this heading?
Well, I mean, why not just turn everything completely upside down? Let's believe that fur can become green. You know what I mean? That turns it totally upside down.
It does.
Let's forget about the old way we used to do everything. Fur should be the greenest product that's out there for keeping somebody warm.
Mm-hmm.
It's the most humane way to actually take an animal. It's not being raised. It grows freely in its nature. It's the open cage, that free range chicken.
Yeah, free range.
It's completely 100% free range. There's everything that everyone's looking for in an egg. Actually, it happens in a wild fur that's actually caught.
Sure.
So it's eating the most organic food that you can imagine, and nature did all of that.
Yeah.
So I mean, let's kind of think about that for a year. Why, I don't know which direction the fur industry is going. Why don't we promote that for a while and speak about the greatness of our trappers?
Mm-hmm.
And we need young trappers to get into the industry to enjoy it, to see the sport that it actually is, to see it's a wonderful heritage that the United States actually has, is having the ability to trap. Let's preserve those rights. It's incredible. It was what actually started our country. It brought explorers here to our country. So, it goes back to our history, actually, also. So, I mean, that's what I'll say about the fur industry. We're going to work hard to market and to save every penny that we can so that trappers can get the most that they can. And we have to hope that it hits fashion again. We have to hope that. And it's there's a lot more demand for it than there is supply,
mm-hmm.
and that's our hope. But we're not going to live like that. We have to live in a business world.
Sure. I asked you earlier about the luxury versus utilitarian use. Do you see in China per se that the average middle income are the ones buying the utilitarian coats? Do you see that then? I mean, it's a good thing, moving fur, good. But do you see that as a hurdle to get over to get it back up to a luxury item?
I don't know how it can get back. I don't see how it can get back up to a luxury item, but I can see that there's a huge demand for it, and that the demand, causes prices to double, to triple.
Sure.
I mean, that's what it can happen. There is still a luxury on a lynx for certain ladies, but that doesn't exist to the extent that it used to. A sable doesn't exist like it used to. Then that's why trimming industry is so valuable, is because many people can actually wear it. Therefore, the demand can be extremely high. I mean, I think that's what we're actually looking at in terms of the fur industry.
Yeah. Okay.
Unless we can go green, then it's a huge luxury.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, you pay 3 times the price of a gallon of milk for something that's organic, versus something that's officially not organic.
Sure.
So I mean, that's a point also.
Yeah.
Okay.
What do you think, Justin?
I'm just kind of blown away sitting here. Now my mind is racing on all these different things, and
What's the fur taker motto on the front of the magazine? The worst thing we can do with wildlife is not manage it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The cruelest. Yeah.
As simple as it can get.
Yeah.
That's right.
I
Simple
believe
as
that
it-
came from Gary Jepson originally,
I agree.
and it
Yeah.
and it stands true.
I mean, it's right on the front. That's the motto, or that's their pledge. I
Right.
mean,
Right.
and it makes 100% sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
and
And we're
you guys are trappers saying that, and you guys know.
Yeah.
well, but it should fit everybody's life. You know, worst thing you can do is not manage it.
Right.
Yeah.
right.
You know?
Well,
So-
you drive. Driving here, how many animals did you see
Oh,
hit on the
my,
road?
yes,
And just the terrible waste, and
Yep.
all of the, and I mean, there's no way to avoid that.
Well, with
Right.
man's influence on habitat, we have to manage our wildlife.
Yeah.
Plain and
It
simple.
just-
It, in a way, it just seems totally irresponsible not to.
Sure, yeah.
I mean, it's
It's
just
Build,
Exactly.
Build a house and not do any repairs to it. Just let it fall apart.
Exactly.
Right,
Yeah,
exactly.
It has to be
Yeah.
managed.
No, I agree with you.
Yeah.
I agree with Justin. Yeah.
And I think I mentioned this on a past podcast, but Jane Goodall recently said, she was talking about grizzly bears specifically, and she said, they're coming back and they're doing quite well despite man. And I would correct her in saying they're coming back
Because
and
of
doing
man.
quite well because of man. We may
Absolutely.
have been the original problem that they maybe declined in numbers. I can't even really address that, but they're coming back in numbers because of wildlife, present day modern wildlife
I agree,
management.
100%. Yep.
It wasn't. It's not despite us. It was because of our care for that species. So,
Yeah,
anyways.
great example.
I guess before we close this out, I just kind of want to everything that, especially in learning all this stuff through Charlie, being involved with him and just seeing how he's done things through the years and being more and more involved with the public, and everything we do as far as putting stuff online and now this podcast and being involved in organizations, and we do everything we can really to try and help the community, the trapping community and the industry. And I'm thinking, well, we just talked about some giant big picture stuff, international markets and things like that, and I'm thinking at home, how's this fitting in for the guy that just likes to go out and trap for the weekend with his kid and stuff. And I would just say this to them, like, whatever you catch, do a good job, know what you want to do with it, do it clean and quickly. And outside of that, what I was kind of thinking in my mind is to go a step further and promote it by wearing it. And we talked about how kind of gaudy and old school this stuff looks. You look like the mountain man walking down with a giant coat.
Yeah.
But you want to support it, and a lot of these guys don't even really wear it. I have
Right.
noticed that to some degree. You'll see it at the convention some, but a part of that is the way it's kind of silly. But on the other hand, the good stuff is the high luxury fashion. You can't really afford it. I'm not going to walk around in a couple $1,000 mink coat or whatever.
Right.
But this stuff that you're talking about now,
Right.
middle class, the trim stuff, it looks pretty slick.
It
and
does.
and
It
it's
does.
affordable. Like that coon coat you were just having here.
and it's not showing off either.
It's not showing
Yeah,
off.
right.
It's
Not
not
gaudy,
It's
yeah.
not real
Again, to
gaudy.
what Charlie said, utilitarian.
And for what coats cost, a good coat anyway, where you're going to pay for a store, it's in that price range. That was a $200 coon coat. Is that right?
Yeah.
And I could see several people wearing that, and people not think two things about it looking hideous or anything like that. It actually looks really good.
And it's very warm.
Yep.
And so I would just say that to people listening that are trappers, because I know we're preaching to the choir and some stuff a lot of times, and we need to do that just so you guys can continue to regurgitate that to the public. But I would say go that one more step and wear some of it to some degree.
Yeah.
That's all I got to say to add to all this, because
Very good.
got my mind thinking about all this stuff.
That's good.
It's
That's a good
mind-blowing.
place.
You got any final thoughts?
No, I just enjoyed being with you guys today. Thanks for this opportunity.
no, we
It was great.
Appreciate you being on. It was
really
a good,
appreciate
good
you.
little convo.
Yeah. How about you, Mike?
Thank you very much.
Whoa.
Charlie and I go back a little bit, so we're pretty comfortable with each other. Justin's trying to weasel his way in, but we'll get him in there. So no,
Well, I'm sure-
very, very two upstanding people, absolutely top of the line. So
Yes.
You both are, yeah.
yeah, yeah.
See how we switch it back?
Yeah. Thank you, Charlie.
We'll talk with Mike for another podcast in the future. Probably get with him at the Trappers College and for a whole different discussion. But so be ready to hear more from him. So
Okay. Great to be with you guys.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Gary.
All right.
Appreciate it.
all right, guys.
Thank you, guys.
Until next time. Thanks for listening. one last thing before we let you go. Got to give a little product highlight here. This week we're going to talk about Top Dog Predator Bait. We sell a lot of it, and for good reason. It's a great bait. Definitely wouldn't be on the trap line without it, that's for sure. But it's not the Bill Nelson formula that everyone's kind of familiar with. It is a bobcat-based meat that's there. Of course, some other added ingredients that I'm not allowed to talk about, but this stuff works good any time of the season, of course. And it actually kind of gets reactivated if you got some rain or say you get it flooded out. We've caught coyotes in standing water with this stuff. So that's one thing to mention that's cool about it. We sell an 8 ounce all the way up to a gallon. And I think the 16 ounce jar is only $14. So you might want to jump on HoosierTrapperSupply.com and pick up a jar there and give it a shot this season if you haven't ever tried it before. But like I said, I could go on for hours about how awesome this stuff is, but that's the highlight this week. And we'll catch you here in about 2 weeks for another episode. Thanks a lot.